Okay. Good evening and welcome. Can everybody hear me? First order of business. Good hearing? Okay. Thank you all for coming. We also want to thank the friends. You'll see them standing and helping guide you to your seats. They've generously hosted a little snack in case you need water. And they can help you if you have any housekeeping questions, guide you to the restrooms, that kind of thing. And we'll mention Fossil again later in the program. Tonight we're here to pose questions to you and for you to ask questions of us. A few guidelines, quickly. We want you to check your politics, religion, and emotions at the door. We're gathered here as a community of neighbors with the goal of putting an end to rumors, misinformation, and divisiveness. We recognize that you're passionate. We are passionate. However, I have faith that we can come together and talk about the issues as civic-minded adults. I'd like to point out Mr. Ed Richards, who is our Sergeant of Arms. If he can wrangle the American Legion Band, I know that he can help keep us all in line. More on Mr. Richards later. We're going to be providing you with some information, and at the end of each topic, we'll open it up for questions, about 10 minutes or so. Please just ask one question and make sure that it's relevant to the topic at hand. And then we'll move on to the next person in order to give everyone a chance. Throughout the evening, you'll get to meet all the trustees who represent you. And as General Hobgood always said, we, the trustees, serve as volunteers, freely give of our time, talent, and treasure for the good of the library. I'll go first. My name is Melody Kotek, and I'm the president of the San Diego Public Library Board of Trustees. I guess I have to stay attached to this in the comment. I've served on the Friends Board as president for 5 years before I joined the library board. So basically, I've been volunteering for this library for about 12 years. Part of what we did at Friends was to help change it from a club. My husband and I helped write the bylaws and the articles and help Fossil become a 501c3. And their mission is to support San Diego Library. They do that with volunteering, and they do that with financial contributions to help us with things that are outside of the operating budget. The book sale is annually, and they earn money that goes into their pot and it's transferred on over to us. I have personally over 25 years experience in the nonprofit world. Before coming to the library, I worked for the Northern Virginia Resource Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing. So if I start to do science, well, that's why. And before that, I was at Grossberg Company CPAs, where I was introduced to what 990s look like and audits, and though I don't understand them entirely, I leave that to the experts, and I try to learn every year what some of these numbers mean. My background in administration and events have also helped me to assist the library fundraiser, Taste for Books, each year. And this is where I get to use my creativity, and I love it. We get to come up with new themes, and I get to work with the staff. And we earn about $20,000 every year as a fundraiser for the library. And that's thanks to all of you coming and enjoying, getting dressed up and enjoying a really spectacular, I always say it's the best party in town. Along with my husband, we moved to Front Royal with some property on Shenandoah River, and I have 3 children that are, my grown children also have homes, so we have four tax-paying citizens, homes and land in Front Royal. And I know we feel it every check we write. When Jeff passed, he made a generous gift as seed money to start up an amphitheater. Some of you will remember that we talked about that a few years ago. It's sitting there. It's a restricted donation and has not been used, and it's just sitting in the endowment fund. Unfortunately, this project had to be put on hold because of these recent controversies last year and this year. Our goal one day is to maybe provide an amphitheater to the citizens of Warren County. My joy is being a grandma. I have a blended family of 6 adult children and 9 grandchildren. And 4 of the grandchildren attend 3 of the public schools here. I also am president of the Front Royal Warren County Tree Stewards. Wear a different hat on Saturdays. So we're out in the community, and that's how I help serve, besides just the library, how I help serve the community. Okay, that's me. Why are we here? One library patron recently shared with us a question that she sent to the Board of Supervisors. Why is it so important for some members of the Warren County Board of Supervisors to work so hard to create such unnecessary acrimony and chaos in their efforts to try and destroy the best asset in Warren County, Samuel's Library? We would ask, why is the county engaged in spending taxpayer money on rehashing issues that were already resolved in 2023? The library took the book challenges seriously and followed all established policies regarding requests for reconsideration. The library added new cards and a new collection to increase parental tools in guiding their children's reading journey. The supervisors acknowledged the changes publicly. The Board of Supervisors and the library eventually came to an agreed upon MOA signed in October by both parties, with a renewable term ending June 30th, 2025. Subsequently, a joint press release was issued. Vicki Cook in the Northern Virginia Daily on October 4th quoted, "I want to acknowledge that the library and the Board of Trustees do an outstanding job, and I do respect the legacy of the library and how much it means to our community. I also believe that the agreement has addressed all of the Board of Supervisors' expectations and accountability of our tax dollars." And yet, here we are. Supervisors Jamison and Cook's library debrief and research report warrants response because it is inaccurate, and despite being so large, I don't know if you've had a chance to read 58 pages, but if you get a minute, you might want to investigate that. And now we have an addendum. Their analysis demonstrates precisely why credentials alone don't guarantee an informed and truthful report. Yes, the library takes issue with this report because it is acrimonious in nature, exhibits bias, is filled with unwarranted accusations, misinformation, and distorted or omitted facts. The library was never invited to the table to discuss options or provide the necessary expertise. This argument is not about transparency. A large portion of the information used in the report can be found on the library's website. Board minutes, financial reports, policies, etc. Knowing how to read the information and truthfully present it to the public is another thing altogether. This is not about the finances. The oversight by our trustees has resulted in high-rated reports from an independent audit each year. Checks and balances are in place. We have no debts, no defaults, no scandals, no lawsuits. We properly manage our investments and gain interest on them. This is not about accountability. By all performance measurements, the library is outstanding. We have years and years of experience and work diligently to provide more programs and services each year. Our 16,148 cardholders can attest to their satisfaction with our services. And we have just been awarded 2024 Library of the Year. This is not about representation or the library's structure. Later, you will meet your representative trustees who guide the library and learn more about why our particular partnership with the county has been so successful over the years. This is not about communication. So much of this could have been avoided last year and this year if the supervisors had entered into a dialogue with the library, as other supervisors have done in the past. And I believe I saw former Supervisor Carter in the room. He can attest to our communications in the past. We asked for earnest negotiations repeatedly out of the public eye. That's where negotiations should happen, but that never happened. This is not about saving taxpayers' money. Changes to the current structure could potentially cost the taxpayers millions to start up a new library and involve losses of volunteers, donations, and grants. What happens now to the 5-year, $500,000 Mellon grant? We just had our ribbon cutting on October 7th, and we're just beginning year 1 with a new staff person, and it's scheduled to be a 5-year. What happens to that? Can you imagine the time and effort by Supervisors Cook and Jameson, staff and lawyers spending time and money on an issue that was resolved? A recent FOIA request shared with us reported that over $16,000 of taxpayers' money has been spent on legal fees alone. How much on staff time? How much on research into a concluded sale of Villa Avenue? And tell me again why that's even relevant. We hear about the $52,000 over and over. Let's be clear. A fact, Samuels has never spent taxpayer money on legal fees. Here's the story. Due to unprecedented book challenges, the Board of Trustees was faced with the responsibility to seek advice and hired a lawyer to advise on First Amendment rights and protect both the library and the county from lawsuits. When the Board of Supervisors voted 4-1 to withhold allocated funding with no hint as to when they might be released, this move felt threatening, and public outcry continued to grow. The lawyer advised we hire a public relations consultant for professional advice. This was a departure from interactions with the county and also unprecedented. The combined expenditure for both the lawyer and the public relations consultant came to approximately $52,000, which was paid through donations made to the library for the very cause. At no time were taxpayers' dollars used to pay for those professional services. All press releases and interviews with the press stated over and over again that we were striving to continue good relations with the board, and we'd like to engage in negotiations. Let's be clear. The library took no part in any public outcry. The citizens and groups acted independently, and Samuel's staff and board acted professionally at each stage of the controversy and took measures to protect the library and the county, while still protecting citizens' freedoms. When September rolled around and our operating account balance was nearly depleted, we did inform the public that we might have to close the doors. This was a truthful fact that the public had a right to know. We will talk more about our endowment fund and its purpose. This seems to be, by all indications and actions, about control, which brings us back to the question of why. I think we have a pretty good idea, but we would like to hear from you and have your take on this. Let's be clear. The Board of Supervisors report is rushed and doesn't allow for citizen input in any meaningful way. The authors have no regard for how this is tearing up this county. We want to ask, to what end? And why are the Board of Supervisors giving up their legitimate oversight responsibilities to a citizen board after this report spent so much time talking about oversight? How is this better? Is the board treating other public-private partners with the same scrutiny? Do they go and interject into the waste management company or the Humane Society and tell them how to run their business? I don't think so. So let's dig in. Let's see this works. Okay. On your right, on your left. There's a chart that identifies what the elements of good governance are. Throughout the night, you're going to hear things that you can tie directly back to civic participation. You're all here. Transparency, accountability, following the rules of law, responsiveness, equitable and inclusive, that we are consensus-oriented, effective, and efficient. These are the topics that we're going to address tonight. There's 5 of them, and as we go through them, we'll have questions after each topic. On your history, let's start there. We'll start with history, but first, I'd like to introduce you to Lisa Varga, who this past year also won 2024 National Librarian of the Year.
Hi y'all, how are you tonight? So thank you for having me here today. I've been a librarian for 25 years and I've worked with a lot of librarians and I've seen a lot of libraries. The past 3 years have been particularly trying for our profession, and we've seen a lot of social media and other campaigns against libraries and librarians who are trying to uphold our core values in the middle of what feels like a relentless storm. In 1939, a group of forward-thinking librarians saw what was happening in other countries and helped create something called the Library Bill of Rights. This explained the purpose of libraries in our society. Our commitment to our communities is nothing new. We rely on 5 core values to guide us. They are access, equity, intellectual freedom and privacy, the public good, and sustainability. Everything you will hear about in this presentation tonight is directly related to these core values and your chart. So when we see an attempt to control the content or work of the library, we tend to rise up. We collect our facts, our figures, our information, and we do our best to reach as many people as possible. Tonight, you all are an example of that. We are truly grateful for your presence and support, and together we can ensure that Samuels Public Library remains a vibrant hub for your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay. I want to get to your questions. I don't want to get into too much, but on your chair, you have the history of the library and the legacy. This is important. It goes back to 1799. And this is important because as you read through it, you'll discover that every major step forward at every juncture in this library's history, since its beginning, each phase was achieved through community involvement. You and your ancestors have built this library from the ground up, and we feel a tremendous responsibility to those who came before us to protect the legacy of this institution. If you have questions about that, we'll be happy to talk about our history. Public-private partnership. So this term has been bantered around. We talked about it last year as well. The public part is the county's contributions to our operating budget. We also received funds from the state of Virginia, and those are both lengthy budget process forms that we have to fill out, and the state has very strict requirements. You can ask Lisa about those. Very strict requirements that we have to meet, and part of what we have to meet in the state is that we're also receiving money from the county or the municipality in whatever county you're in. Our part is the private part. The advantage in our particular relationship is that we're a nonprofit. I know that it's been talked about that a lot of other libraries are run by the government, but we have an advantage because when you're a nonprofit, there are things that can happen that don't happen at a government level. And we qualify for this under Warren County's Code 39-1, public-private partnership, and the library is included in those categories. So what this means is that we can have an endowment fund. We can hold fundraising events and campaigns. We can accept donations. People can receive a letter, for donations that they make. And we do every time someone makes a donation. We're eligible for grants that the county may not be able to be eligible for because of our nonprofit status. Hence the Mellon grants, things like that. We have lower operating costs in some cases because we work with TechSoup, grants, Grant Nation. There's a long list of places where you can go and get the same computers or equipment at a lower cost because you're a nonprofit. Volunteerism and exemption from certain taxes. I'd like to just talk a little bit about volunteerism at this point. We have a very vibrant volunteer community, and we treasure them, every single one that comes here. They lighten the load, and they just add to the whole community feel here at the library. We couldn't do all of the things that we do without them. It would mean that we would need to hire additional staff, and that would raise the cost to the taxpayers. So just having a vibrant volunteer program reduces the cost to the taxpayers. Last year, they had over 8,800 hours, roughly, and that equates to $277,000 that otherwise we would have to put out for in salaries. We did a survey, and I want to introduce you to Joan and let her introduce herself. We just have a short little minute about how our volunteers feel about working here at the library. You need to introduce yourself to the I'm Joan Richardson. I am a resident of the 4th District. I have lived and paid taxes in Montana since the mid-1980s, and my husband and I moved here to live permanently in 2002. We are happy to be here. My background is basically that I have a master's in social work. I work mostly in healthcare, oncology, and hospice programs. I'm very proud of my hospice team work as a social worker to help people stay at home and die at home. That was such an honor. I also am very proud to, once we moved to Warren County, to reach out into the community and start to work at St. Louis Community Clinic.
because I wanted to help people who couldn't afford health care or health insurance to have health care. And that's what St. Luke did for the community, is they help those folks get the care that they need. It is, again, an honor. So I feel like I know my community. I have worked on the Northwestern Community Services Board. I've been on the board for, I guess, 9 years. So I felt I have a sense of that community. I have also been on the Library Board of Trustees and the Friends of Samuel's Library Board, serving as president from time to time on both boards. Have the honor of volunteering in the library, so I get to hear people talk about what they think about the library. I get to see what they're reading. It's a wonderful experience. I recommend it. If you've got nothing to do, sign up to volunteer at the library. So that's kind of my background. I had the honor of working with volunteers at St. Luke. I was a volunteer coordinator there. And again, I had the opportunity to work with the Friends of Samuel's Library. So volunteers are near and dear to my heart. We have been fortunate in that we have a solid core of volunteers. We sent out an informal survey. And from that informal survey of our volunteers from the library end of things, specifically from the library, and volunteers through the Friends of Samuel's Library. And what we learned is that we have one volunteer who's been a volunteer for 34 years. She started out on Chester Street. So we have 2 volunteers that have been a volunteer for 16 years. We have a volunteer for 10 and one for 11. And then the rest of them are under 10 years, between 10 years and 1. So there's some commit. They do a range of things. Pull holds, put books away, cover books. They do a range of things. And they do it because they love books. They love helping patrons find things that they're looking for. They love listening to the kids and helping with the kids' events. They also, I think, pretty protective of the library. And when asked about just for general comments at the end of the survey, some of them were pretty angry at the town. Some of them had some pretty upfront, in-your-face kinds of comments. Most said that they loved the library staff. They loved the library routine, the order, the strength of the support that comes their way. So, as Melody said, you look at it, 8,860 volunteer hours. That's pretty impressive. If you want, I can read you some quotes, but maybe not. I'll let you, you can talk to me later.
Is the 8,000 volunteer hours, is that 1 year?
That's 1 year.
That's impressive.
That was the last fiscal year. Yes. Thank you.
You can read the advantages here under the private partnership. We have developed relationships with all kinds of civic organizations, the schools, the
GED happens here with Laurel Ridge. Just years of experience. We work with the businesses in town and all the community groups like the Elks and Rotary and Kiwanis. Okay, your turn. What are your questions? This is Erin. Erin is our library director. Erin is amazing. She brings a lot of vibrant young energy to the position and has been at the library and worked her way up from circulation through managing the adult reference section. And when the opening came, she was ready, and we're very happy to have her. And she is going to be the person who brings you the microphone so that everybody can hear your question. The lady has
I don't need a mic. I don't have an indoor voice.
Sorry, but there are other people who can't hear you,
Oh,
perhaps, and we want to make sure everybody hears the question.
well, it's kind of loud, so
Okay.
So I have a question. I have a long relationship with nonprofits, so I'm very familiar with endowments and fundraising and all of that. What concerns me in reading the proposal that the Board of Supervisors has in their 7.3, it talks about control of expenditures and that they will accept donations, requests, et cetera, et cetera. So if someone like myself were to write a check, if this were to go through, does the Board of Supervisors get it, or does Samuel's Library, the nonprofit? I mean, what happens then to fundraising?
Yeah.
Who decides where one's check goes?
Right. Eileen said, it depends how you make it out.
I would say that they have indicated that any donations received by the county will be going into their general fund. So it's not even guaranteed to go to the library.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, okay, so if you wanted to donate for a specific purpose for the library, if this goes through, it may not go there, but it goes into the general, Warren County General Fund.
That's how it reads.
That's what he said the other night.
Yeah.
That's how that.
Yeah.
So this is a. So I work in county government as a contracts manager and stuff like that, so I know this is about. Never already here speaking. So actually have the code book in my partners. I studied there. The code is written, and one of my questions that I would have for the board is, the code is written that the funding for any public library must be separate from the general fund. They are not doing that in this, so that is something that I would bring up. They're violating it. The other thing is their chapter 7 is very vague, based on the county code and county ordinances. It's extremely vague compared to what, the Virginia things. Which part? So the code states that if a county sets up a board, a library board, any funds that they get must be kept separate. It must be in a separate library fund. Cannot go in the general fund. Any donations, any money, any fundraising must be separate. Thank you.
You have another question?
Yeah.
Following that, if they separate the fund, do they still control it, or what sort of oversight do they have?
If the county is one fund, yes, they still have oversight over the funds, but they can only use it for the library. It cannot be used for anything else. There would have to be a pretty good justification. But yeah, going back to the code, it said that we are going to provide to operate a free public library.
Where is that code? They cannot use those funds for any other purpose. No other purpose. Nothing. You have any other questions?
How much is in the endowment fund, and what would happen to that?
The endowment fund is owned by Samuel's Library, and it will stay that way. The county cannot we're a private entity. We own all the assets, and our endowment fund is ours, and it's not, they can't touch that.
I'm gonna do one. Sorry.
Hear me? All right, there you go. Just so we can keep going, I'm gonna do one more question for this, so is there any, all right, one more?
Numbers are not my thing, so in the county, you mentioned the Humane Society. Are they run the same way? In other words, does the Humane Society, if I write a check for the Humane Society, it goes,
They have no board, they're not proposing a board for the Humane Society,
Yeah.
but they include their nonprofit, and they're raising funds all the time, they're struggling, so, and their public-private partnership is saying that we are.
that they are not being run? No, I understand, I'm just trying to, I'm thinking of county, organizations that accept donations from people.
Right.
So if I write a check to the library under this.
Right now, if you write a check to the library, it stays with us.
Right.
If you write a check to Humane Society, it'll stay with
I'm
them.
just thinking about what would be next. I mean, not getting past ourselves, but thinking the same thing, if they were to do that. So I mean, I don't see what the precedent is, but again, I'm not a lawyer, so I just read that word because I don't know if you can write a check to Parks and Rec, that goes to county. Okay. Because any money, my understanding is that any money raised by Parks and Rec goes to the county general fund. It doesn't go back to Parks and Rec.
And generally, people don't make donations to the county because they're already paying taxes. Yeah. Yes, which is why this public-private partnership has worked so well for so many years, so. Any other questions before we move on?
One more, Adele.
I don't know if this falls in the category of misinformation that's been rolling around. I think I read somewhere that a person said, oh, the library will retain its board. If this will just be an additional board that supervises the library. Is that true or false or?
Just hold it like that.
This is part of the problem, is that this, chapter 7 has been rushed through so much, that there are a lot of unanswered questions. And as we go through, Scott's going to address chapter 7 in this ordinance when we get to that. Are we good? Okay, let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is our board and how we represent you. And I would like to introduce Celeste, who will introduce herself, and then introduce the other board members. We're going to do that fairly quickly, so we can get to questions. But she will tell you how we operate.
Good evening. My name is Celeste Brooks, and I am a 25-year resident of Warren County. I grew up in a tiny town in New York State. Please don't hold that against me. We had only 7,000 people and 42,000 apple trees, so front rows of the metropolis as far as I'm concerned. I worked for a while at IBM and then joined As a civilian, I went to the Air Force at Hanscom Air Force Base and worked in the public affairs office there for a few years. Before coming to this beautiful location that felt a lot like home, having grown up in the mountains. I worked at Randolph-Macon Academy for 3 years as the assistant director of admissions, and then was promoted to the director of public relations and spent 18 years in that job. In 2020, I then moved into the Warren Coalition, which is a drug prevention, education, treatment, recovery organization here in town. And so I've been around nonprofits for the last 25 years since I moved here. In addition to working for them, I've also been on the board for the Downtown Business Association, which later became Downtown Front Royal, the Front Royal Police Foundation. Somehow I got roped into that one. And also I've been on the Salvation Army board, which I can't seem to let go of. I'm now in my 7th year here on the board for Samuels, and I am the head of the committee on trustees. So I just want to go over a few things very briefly, and then I'll have the rest of you guys introduce yourselves. We do take our responsibilities very seriously. We are all tax-paying citizens, and we certainly don't want to waste any of these funds, and that includes our own. But to go sort of in order on the slide, I know there's some folks over there who possibly cannot see it. I normally do not read slides, but since you can't see everything, the responsibilities under legal include following federal, state, local, and FOIA laws, following nonprofit bylaws and structures, securing funding, and avoiding conflicts of interest. And just to expand on that slightly, upholding the laws also includes upholding freedom of speech for us by not censoring things that are coming into the library. We, as a board, do not necessarily make that decision. We hire very competent people to do that job, and we trust them. And then when a review is requested, that's when we get involved. But we, aside from that, do not choose what's going into the library. We also make sure that we are adhering to non-discriminatory statements. We sign a conflict of interest statement every year in case anything has changed. And we're encouraged, if you have anything come up during the year, make sure that you let us know. That is part of our board training, which takes place every summer. And these responsibilities are on each and every single one of us. On the fiduciary, we've got oversight of budgets and expenses, protect the use of public monies, and conduct annual audit and financial advisor review. Again, I'm sorry for reading the slides, but I'm assuming some of you can't see. So we are responsible for getting the library's funding, and that includes working with the local government, it includes fundraising, it includes grants and all kinds of things. We also have the obligation to work with the staff to create and approve the budget each year, and they do an excellent job of trying to trim it down to the bare essentials every single year. As I said, we have no interest in raising our own taxes. And we also, every single person on this board donates money to the library. And so we have a lot of reason to want to make sure that this library is being run well. We also have the annual audit that is conducted, and both that and the financial advisory review are presented to the full board each year. I will admit some of us might have slightly glazed eyes by the end of that meeting, because some of us are numbers people and some of us are not. The finance committee is led by Michelle Leisure, and of course, they're the experts on this, so we do rely heavily on them to explain it to the rest of us who aren't so financially minded. Policy making. This is the operating and administrative policies. All of those are up on our website. We can take into consideration any laws that may impact a policy. And for that reason, part of our board makeup, we always make sure to include at least one lawyer on our board, preferably two, because lawyers are busy people and they can't always make meetings. Any board member may request a review of a policy, and then it'll go through the bylaws and policy committee, and they'll get to work on it. And that committee is led by Kim Emerson, who will lead in a few minutes. Planning, we have the strategic plan, which is again, you met Joan a few minutes ago, and Joan does an extensive community survey and makes sure that what we find out there is incorporated into the strategic plan and still aligns with the library's mission and vision. All members of the board are asked to provide input, and I can't tell you the number of hours that they put in on that. The development plan, if you're not familiar with the term development, that's the fundraising plan. So that is our annual appeals, our planned gifts, fundraising events, grants research, and applications. A lot of that work, the heavy lifting is done by our staff, our wonderful Amy over there. But Michael Whitlow here is the head of that particular committee. And then, of course, we also do the selection and annual review of the library director, who is in charge of the day-to-day operations. If you know anything about nonprofits, you do not want your board here every day in your business. You want to be able to do your work. So Erin does a wonderful job, and we're happy to have her. No, I'm sorry, we do have the selection process over there. Sorry, thought it was the next slide. So the selection process, this is something that's gotten a lot of questions over the past year. And I have been the head of this committee for quite a few years now. When I came on, we were kind of wandering around going, okay, who can we possibly ask to join the board? Because like every nonprofit, it was difficult to get people to join our board. It's a lot of work, and there's an expectation of donations. So we're basically asking you to pay to give us your time too. And, you know, it is a lot. And so that changed last year. We had 10 applications for 3 spots. We had anticipated that given everything that had happened. And so we had put a process into place. And the way that we did that is we looked at the applications, and we judged them based on a lot of different criteria. We asked ourselves, where are our holes? What expertise do we lack on our board? Do we have representation from each voting district? By the way, I forgot to mention I'm in the 4th district. And if we don't have representation, then what are we missing? And as you can see right now, we do have representation from every district. What upcoming projects do we have? And do we need an expert in that area? Who's coming off the board? What holes is that going to leave? So those are all questions that we look at. We look at the makeup, and we want to have fundraising experience. We need legal expertise. We need accounting expertise. So we look at all of those different things when we're trying to come up with the board. Based on that, we reviewed the applications. We picked 4 people who we felt would best fill the 3 holes. 2 of them we had similar experience, and so we wanted to interview both of them. And when we were done, we had our top 3. We brought it back to the Committee on Trustees because there were 2 of us who did the interviews just for the sake of time. I mean, it's hard to schedule to get 6 people into a room all at once. Again, volunteers. And so the Committee on Trustees, they got to hear our thoughts from the interview process. They unanimously approved those people to move forward. When I first took on this committee, it was sort of a surprise. It's July, it's the annual meeting, here's the nominees, and everybody vote on them in front of them. And I thought that was really awkward. So we had changed that. We now present the candidates in May at our monthly meeting. And then we do not vote on them until the annual meeting in July. So they're not present at the May meeting unless they want to be. And that gives the board members an opportunity to check into themselves, express any concerns that they may have, and for us to make any changes that are necessary. I will say that so far, we have exceptionally qualified and wonderful people who serve on this board, and we have not had anybody who's come up and said, oh my gosh, do you know what he did? You can't have him on your board. We have not had that. And that, I consider that a huge blessing. I'm sorry, I was talking and didn't keep track of where I was in my notes. Okay, I think we're good. I think that covered just about everything, other than I did mention that we have training in the summer, and that is something that we we learn about our history, and and he's laughing at me because I said after 7 years, I think I know it. But we also will talk about different things. We'll have trainings from the Virginia Library Association, and different organizations will come in and help us. So I am now going to, I think it might be easier to skip. Next slide, yeah. There you go. Yes, please. Thank you. Okay. I sort of hit this as I was talking because I didn't think we needed a separate thing as we went through. So we've already talked about all of the work that the different committees do, but you have those in front of you as we go through. You'll be able to see when somebody mentions what committees they serve on. It'll be right there in front of you. Actually, come on. So she said, someone told me. You can stand up.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Madeline Hickman. I've been a resident of Front Royal since 1985. I am the advertising sales rep at the Northern Virginia Daily for Front Royal, Warren County. I have been on the Board of Trustees. I'm in my 7th year as well. I'm serving on the executive committee this year as secretary. I am also on the board of, or the committee on trustees and development committee.
Hello, I'm Lisa Cobb. My husband, John Finzel, and I came to Front Royal 40 years ago, and we raised a family with 2 children. We had a satisfying career, both of us in education. We were involved in the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary, the very fabric of the Warren County community. But more recently, I am managing a $5 million grant that's focused on mental health of K through 12th grade in Winchester. My experience with the library began the year we moved in 40 years ago. The library is very much a part of my family's life. And more recently in the library, besides being a trustee member, I started a fundraiser called the Jigsaw Puzzle Competition, and I'm putting a plug in. There's on the website, and there's information in the library lobby, friendly competition, prizes, and refreshments, thanks to Play Favorites. And the January, yes. And so I've brought my experience raising 2 children, 2 grandchildren, my educational experience, my degrees in organizational leadership, and the grant work that I do to my position in the Board of Trustees. I've contributed more than a few dollars, more than a few hours, and in fact, my husband and I made a planned gift. So 40 years is not enough. We wanted to support the library forever. It's not that much money, but still, we made an effort. So I'm very proud of this library, and it's an honor to be a trustee. Thank you.
I'm Kimberly Emerson. I rejoined the library board July 1st of this year when I thought things had settled down. I am currently the chair of the Policies and Bylaws Committee. I previously served on the library board from 2013 to 2023, and during that time I was vice president of the board and also served on the Bylaws Committee. Can't seem to get rid of that. The Finance Committee and the Executive Committee. I am an attorney. I've practiced for over 20 years. I'm presently a partner at Sharpman White & Wisely. I started my career in Harrisonburg, Virginia, focusing in commercial real estate and corporate healthcare work. I presently focus my practice in family law, real estate, collection matters. I'm also a certified guardian ad litem for children and incapacitated adults, and I'm licensed to practice in the Commonwealth of Virginia and also the federal courts in the Western District of Virginia. I hold a Juris Doctorate from the University of Richmond. a Bachelor of Arts degree with major in political science and a minor in Spanish. I previously have served on the advisory board of the Salvation Army. I am currently president of the Warren County Bar. I have been for many years because I can't seem to get rid of the job. I have also served as adjunct faculty at Laurel Ridge, where I've taught legal research, bankruptcy contracts, and real estate in the legal administration program. I'm married. I have 2 children that attend Warren County Public Schools. I've lived in Warren County since 2008.
I'm Louis Milton. I've been here since 2017. I am a trustee at large. I'm still learning exactly what that means. When I get to the table, like, we have a joint meeting. So I joined the board in 2013 when we had that big meeting with all the cameras. So Mike and I joined in that day. So very, very exciting. I thought I was just doing policy, bylaws, and looking at board meetings. So who I am, there's a lot of stuff. But let's just say I'm in the IT sector since 1998, usually working with government contracts. So I've worked with NASA, Deltek is not a government contract, but it's a financial company. Worked with many trusts doing asbestos claims. Basically, if the lawyers have a problem, I'm the guy who looks at the data, analyzes it, and tells them what they need to look at and look for patterns. So a lot of people call that big data. It's just data to me. I have an associate's of arts, so I'm not as very suave with the degrees and everything, but I know a thing or two. And I've had many jobs in IT that just go on and on. Most of my clients are out from oil, so I just bring the money here and spend locally.
Hi, my name is Ed Richards. I first came to the Valley to go to Shenandoah University back in, Shenandoah University, then back in 1973, and came to Front Royal in 1977 for the first time as a student teacher at Warren County High School. Subsequently, I was hired at Randolph-Macon Academy in 1978, where I was music director and fine arts chairman until I retired in 2021. I'm a resident of Chester County, so actually I'm not a county resident. I live about 100 feet out of the county. But I've been involved in the arts here in the community. I direct the American Legion Community Band. I helped start that band in 1986 and continue to direct it. And I'm going to plug it because we have a great Christmas concert coming up on December 17th at Lawrence Chapel with RMA. Hopefully the expertise I bring to the board, other than my involvement in the community, would be in the area of fine arts, where I do have a bachelor's and master's degree, both from Shenandoah University.
Hi, I'm Scott Jenkins. My wife Lisa and I first came to Warren County in 2012 when we set out on a venture to start to rehabilitate, bring back to life a dilapidated, abandoned historic property known as Mountain Home. In 2014, we opened Mountain Home Bed and Breakfast, and since that time, we've welcomed over 20,000 guests to Warren County. In addition to our personal taxes that we pay in Warren County, our business has contributed over $45,000 in transient occupancy taxes, sales taxes, and food and meals taxes. So we're fully invested in this community. My background, I've got about 30 years of management experience, most of that in the IT and telecom sectors. I've got an undergraduate degree from the University of Richmond, the bachelor's in business administration, master's in management from the Kellogg School at Northwestern, which we jokingly say is one of the 10 schools in the top 5. So I've got a lot of experience working through controversies, I joined the board just in July of this year, so I'm one of the newbies. For the 3 years prior to that, though, I served on the Front Royal Warren County Economic Development Authority. And then we worked through the aftermath of scandals, trying to recover as many assets as we could. We went through litigation, mediation, onto a scene, digging through paperwork to recover millions of dollars for our community. In the summer of this year, I testified on behalf of the county at Jennifer McDonald's sentencing hearing, describing the impacts that the scandal had on the community, not just financial, but in terms of violating the trust of the community and the damage long-term that does. And we worked very hard to try to repair relationships across the county, the town, and the various financial institutions that were impacted by that. I spent a lot of time in negotiations and conversations with town officials, county officials, bank officials, and after 3 years of that, it was consuming too much time, taking me away from our bed and breakfast business. So I took a step away from that. But at that time, I told Cheryl Cullors, my supervisor from the South River District, I find another way to contribute to the community, something that wasn't quite as time intensive. So when there's an opportunity to apply for an opening on the trustees with the library, I put my name in the hat. And I spent more time than I thought.
Hello, my name is Kate Troche, and I am also one of the newer board members to the trustees this year. I'm very excited for the opportunity to work on this board with such great people. I am relatively new to the Front Royal area. My husband and I have owned property since 2008, but we just moved full-time in 2022. This was one of the first places that I came to, and look forward to combining the work that I do with my love of reading and book clubs, with or without wine. I have been an accountant for 32 years. I have been rooted in the audit profession for half of that time, and working with nonprofits and government contractors for the remaining part of that time. I was an auditor for the Department of Defense originally, and then went into public accounting. But I think of myself as a pretty hard auditor, so I dig in hard on the numbers, and I'm really glad to be part of this and to be able to say that this is a great organization with very clean books. They've done a great job. So I'm really happy that I can help in that area and continue that. My children are flown out of the house, but my husband and I are really enjoying being part of the community. Thank you.
My name is Michelle Laser, and I'm really glad Kate's here because I'm the treasurer this year. I moved in Front Royal in 2008 from Southern California with my husband. We wanted to get closer to home in our home as Ohio. I'm the treasurer. I have a bachelor's degree from Ohio State University, with a major in accounting. I don't want to talk about the game last weekend. Before joining Samuels, I served as a treasurer for WIT, which is Women in Cable and Telecommunications. I served as role treasurer for 2 years in that organization. I have been in cable and telecommunications and finance for over 30 years. So that's where my financial expertise mainly comes from. We've raised 2 children in Front Royal. My son is now what you call a rat at BMI. If anybody's familiar with that, very painful for a mother. And my daughter's going to graduate this year, and she's looking at colleges right now. Interesting, similar to Scott, my husband is a Rotarian. I know there's several Rotarians in the group. And so as my kids got older, I'm like, well, I want to get back to my community as well, and I was looking for a volunteer opportunity. So somebody's like, apply at the library, I'm like, that would be great, I think I could use my skills there, and I wanted something non-political. And I wanted a non-political volunteer opportunity. But here I am, 3 years later, and I love this organization, and I love the library. So no regrets, but it's a now a nice joke.
Hello, my name is Whitlow. Right, Michael Whitlow. I'm honored to serve as the Vice President of the board. I also sit on the Committee of Trustees, and I'm the Chair for the Development Committee. I bring a background as a Marine Corps veteran, entrepreneur, and a proud Rotarian. I'm deeply proud and I'm committed to ensuring that our library remains a vital resource for growth and connection in Warren County. Through my work in the strategic planning, fundraising, and community engagement, I've seen firsthand the impact that access to knowledge and the opportunity they can have on our residents. It's a privilege to be here and united in the mission of strengthening our community through the power of public service. And then I have another one. Lori's not here today, so I'm going to read this. Lori Gerard joined the San Luis Public Library Board of Trustees in 2022. She is currently the member of the Trustees and Bylaw Committees. Before joining the board, Lori was on the Friends of San Luis Library Board of Directors. She was also serving as the director and president of that organization. She also volunteers at the library's Epilogue Bookstore, where she helps with scheduling. Since April 2023, Lori has been working as a document specialist in accessibility. In this role, she ensures that electronic content is accessible to everyone, regardless of their abilities. Lori took a break from the workforce in 2004 to stay at home with her children. Before that, she began her career at Safeway, working her way up through the courtesy clerk to store manager. Lori briefly left Safeway to serve in the United States Navy from 1991 to 93. Her only duty station was the sub base in Groton, Connecticut, where she worked in the radiological control supporting the U.S. submarine fleet. This experience helped her grow personally and professionally. And when she returned to Safeway, they placed her in a fast track to management program. Lori has been homeschooling her 3 children since 2009. When her oldest was in kindergarten, she was involved in 2 homeschool cooperatives. As a parent teacher, board member of her church, where she and her husband lead the youth group and serve in the leadership roles at the church. And her free time, Lori enjoys spending time with her husband, 3 children, hiking with her dog, volunteering in her church and community. Thank you.
Here you have it. We are your friends, your neighbors, and fellow taxpaying citizens. And we might call on one of you one day to join the board. Any questions for our trustees or about our trustee process? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who's going to talk to us about this proposed Warren County Library Board.
Okay, some of this has already come up in some of the questions and answers a little bit ago, so I'm going to rehash some of this. On November 19th, when the Board of Supervisors authorized advertising for a public hearing, that put this proposed ordinance on the fast track because they very quickly scheduled the public hearing for December 10th. Typically, when a public hearing is announced, there's a 30-day lead notice to give the public time to get up to speed and become familiar with what is being proposed before they take a vote on it. They didn't give 30 days notice this time. They announced it just before the Thanksgiving holiday and gave us 3 weeks notice before the public hearing. So I ask each of you, please review that ordinance, be familiar with that, have your questions, have your comments for the public hearing that comes up next week. It's critically important that we speak and make sure that the voices of the residents of the community are heard. When I looked at the proposed ordinance and I compared it to the Code of Virginia, I found that much of the ordinance is simply boilerplate from the Code of Virginia. The code is necessarily broad to give counties and cities the flexibility to operate within that code, but they can be much more specific in the terms that they put into a county code. Our supervisors chose a very broad, vaguely defined draft to submit for public hearing. If you look at it, there are a lot of gaps, a lot of questions about how this would work. Whereas I'm not a lawyer, but I've got enough experience to know what questions to ask. I don't have all of the answers though. What I saw was a go ahead to the next slide. How do we do that? What I saw was no residency requirement. You don't have to be a Warren County resident to be on the new Warren County Library Board. Okay. Is that better? Okay. That was an interesting omission when I looked at it because with last week's announcement at the supervisors meeting where they were discussing and preparing to authorize another public hearing for eliminating the Finance and Audit Committee. I went back and looked at how that committee was established in 2022. And that committee has a residency requirement. That committee's bylaws that the board submitted for approval in 2022 also outlines preferred work experience and skills for someone to be eligible to serve on that committee. This Chapter 7 ordinance doesn't have anything to say about where somebody lives, whether they're a resident of our community or not. They could come from anywhere. It doesn't say anything about what their qualifications should be. Could be anybody. Also, it outlines 4 civic members of the board. We have 5 magisterial districts. So guaranteed, at least one district is not going to be represented on this library board. It also stipulates that one supervisor or county employee will be appointed to the board. What's unusual about this is that typically when a supervisor serves on a board, when that supervisor ends his or her term, either through retiring off the board of supervisors or losing an election, they come off of whatever appointed boards they're serving on and are replaced by an active supervisor. However, if you read the proposed ordinance, the supervisor who's initially put onto that board by a 3-person majority of our 5 supervisors say, were to roll off of the Board of Supervisors, would stay on the library board through the end of their term, and an additional supervisor would be appointed to the library board. So instead of a 5-member board, it would expand to 6. And if you game the system, and I'll show you in a slide in a minute how you can game the system, you can then expand it again to a 7th member 2 years later when the terms align for another supervisor to retire off the Board of Supervisors but stay on the library board. So the current supervisors could stack that board to have a much larger influence, even beyond their elected term. That doesn't sound to me like it's in our best interests. That sounds to me like a political way to maintain power and control. Yeah, let's go ahead to the next slide. Okay, now lack of a financial accountability. What we've heard from the supervisors up to now is that the primary and overriding problem that they see, that they want to correct, is a lack of accountability to the taxpayers. This proposed ordinance doesn't do that. Instead, it takes the power away from the supervisors and it invests fiscal authority, decision-making over contracts and how funds are spent to a non-elected but appointed board that is not representative of all the county's residents and that has no term limits to it. Those board members can be reappointed in perpetuity and is imbalanced in that you have political officials, supervisors, dominating that board. Donations, we talked a little bit about donations. The way that the ordinance is crafted, donations made to the library board, the Warren County Library Board, are the property of Warren County. Now, the state code does stipulate that any donations made to the library board can only be used for library services. And if you give the benefit of the doubt that the county intends to adhere to that ordinance, which legally they have to do, it still doesn't protect the donor's intentions, doesn't respect the donor's intentions. If I decided I wanted to direct funding for a children's reading program, the county can overwrite that and they can decide, oh, we want to restrike the parking lot. We're going to use that money to restrike the parking lot. They've set themselves up that they could do that in violation of the donor's intentions. That doesn't sound like what we would want. There's no mention of what would happen with user fees or late fines, how those monies would be used. There's no mention of how donations or those other fees might be used to offset a reduction in county funding. Rather than when you donate funds today, the money that you donate is over and above what we get from county and state and grants, and it goes into programming, not into operations, not into salaries, not into restriping a parking lot. It goes into programming. But the county is setting themselves up that they could redirect those funds and use it to offset a reduction in what they contribute directly from their budget. That doesn't sound like that's what we would want. The other glaring thing that I noticed, which shocked me, was when they talk about the library board's responsibility is to submit an annual budget no later than February 1st. Read the ordinance carefully. For the next calendar year. county operates on a fiscal year that starts on July 1 and ends on June 30th. So fast forward to February 1st, 2025, and your newly appointed Warren County Library Board submits its draft budget that would be for delivering library services starting January 1st, 2026. Samuel's Library is funded through June 30th of 2025. What's going to happen between July 1, 2025 and December 31, 2025? Big blank question mark. Next slide. Big red question mark. And what's going to happen beyond the fiscal year? Because when the supervisors approve a budget for the next fiscal year, they have to include the tax rates and the taxation schedule for that fiscal year. They can't commit funding beyond that fiscal year because they don't have matching revenue to offset it. So the newly created Warren County Library Board will submit a calendar year budget that for the second half of 2026 isn't yet funded. How is that going to work? A lot of questions there. That puts a lot of risk in my head about how are you going to have a library operating when you have such murky finances, and it's going to create instability. I don't see how that can be a workable answer. And maybe that was a mistake, but I don't think so. They worked very quickly to craft this ordinance. It's really with question marks. And we should demand answers. And they should answer those before they vote to adopt that ordinance. Because I don't think it's well thought through. Okay, questions?
I'm confused about the four that you are talking about, the no terms. In the ordinance, it says specifically 5 members who shall be appointed. And then where it says the terms, additional members shall be appointed as follows: for 1 term, 1 year, 1 member for 2, 1 member for 3, and then subsequent will be 4. So I didn't understand what you were talking about.
Okay, sure. The Virginia Code stipulates a minimum of 5 board members for a library board.
Mm-hmm.
What our supervisors are proposing is a board of 5. 4 of those would be citizen representation. 1 of those the 5th person would be either a supervisor or a county employee.
Right.
That's how you get to 5.
Okay.
And that one supervisor, though, when that one supervisor finishes out their supervisor term, if they still have time left on their term on the library board, they would stay on the library board. They wouldn't roll off. And they would be replaced by another supervisor. So the board would expand by 1 member. I see you're kind of crunching through that. Yeah, it's a gotcha. They're hoping that you don't read this very carefully.
Yeah, I just never, you would automatically assume that if they're no longer a supervisor, then that 1 seat would be then taken by the new supervisor.
That would be normal practice.
Right.
But that's not what you're proposing.
Okay.
How is it possible for them to appoint a year management structure for a nonprofit?
The Warren County Library Board would be totally separate and distinct from Samuel's Library. Samuel's Library is a nonprofit entity. It's not a county agency. The library board is a county entity, county-appointed entity that is given fiduciary responsibility over decisions and county funds, the supervisors would appropriate the money to the library board, who would then decide how to spend it. And if you take a look at Mr. Jameson's addendum to the record that was reviewed last night at the Warren County Supervisors Work Session, with very little advance notice, he outlines potential outcomes that the library board could take. They could decide to contract to a third party. Might be Samuel's Library, probably, might not be. Could be a for-profit business that does exist and does do some business in at least one municipality in Virginia, but is not based in Virginia and has very little hands-on experience in Virginia. Or the library board could decide to operate a library on its own. It would be up to that 5-member library board, appointed, not elected, to make that decision. We wouldn't have any input into that, nor would the supervisors themselves. They've taken themselves out of the picture. They've abrogated their oversight and fiduciary responsibility to an appointed board.
So essentially, what would happen is possibly they would be effectively taking over what we currently have experience as Samuel's Library.
Yes.
And literally taking it out of the hands of the Board of Trustees.
Well,
how is that possible?
Melody will jump in here if I misspeak. But technically, Samuel's Library is a separate entity, it's a nonprofit entity. What they do doesn't affect, whether they create a board or not, doesn't affect Samuel's Library's existence. It does affect Samuel's Library's funding dramatically. The county contributes the lion's share of the operational budget for the library. And in addition, there's a little under $250,000 of funding from the state. That state aid is contingent upon county participation. If the county pulls out its funding to Samuel's, the state funding disappears as well. Then you're looking at Samuel's Library's funding sources just went down about 90%. How do you operate a library on 10% of what you've been operating on? That's a question. That's an uncertainty because it hasn't happened.
How does this stop? I mean, besides the pitchforks, how does this stop? I mean, how did we get here? I've been a resident of Front Royal. I graduated from high school here in 1975. And I've been here since the early 70s. No, I've been here since the early 70s. It pisses me off to no end that we are here doing this stuff. I don't know how we got here. All I wanted to do is fucking stop. I want it to stop. I'm tired of it. Stop it.
I want you to be in this,
I do want it to stop, and I don't know how to stop it.
election.
Oh, We're not up to an election right now. What do we do now? What's the next thing we do?
I'll share my perspective. Again, I'm a newbie on the library board. I've been on the board now for 5 months. I've learned a lot. A lot. I still have a lot more to learn. But I'm a quick learner. And what I see is a train rolling down a path that is disregarding the wishes of the residents of the majority of the community. And it's disregarding all of the good work, the generations of good work that have come out of a public-private partnership in a library that traces its roots back to the 1790s. Samuel's Public Library, the public library in this community is the second oldest in Virginia. The only way to stop that train is to stand up and be heard. If this is not if that's not the direction you want to go, you've got to make the supervisors listen.
All right, we are running a little bit, we've got a half hour left, so I thought we have time for one more question for this section.
So you mentioned the public forum on the 10th. How does one get to speak at that? And then more importantly, if you don't get to speak, can you submit questions that they have to answer? Yeah, good. Excellent questions, thank you for that.
There's a difference between the normal routine public comment session at a regularly scheduled supervisor meeting, which is capped at 1 hour. Each speaker gets a maximum of 3 minutes. So a couple of weeks ago at public comment session, there were, I think, 21 speakers that got in. There were a lot of other people that wanted to speak that were not able to. At a public hearing, there was no time limit. You're still limited to 3 minutes for your say, but come prepared, you can submit hard copy of your comments and additional input for the public record at the time that you speak. All you have to do is hand it to Zach, and it becomes part of the public record. And then you can speak your 3 minutes. And we can stay there all night long, we can stay there until sun, if we have
They're required to listen to every person.
people like this, they have to stay there and listen to what we have to say.
Right, the supervisors are required to listen to everyone that wishes to speak at a public hearing.
But the sheet goes out at 6 o'clock.
Yeah. We can sign up, be there at 6 o'clock or earlier to put your name on the speaker list. And then you have to stick around, probably into the parking lot, because the building will be past capacity, and wait for your name to be called to speak, and then be present to speak. I think,
We got it.
okay, all right, I'm sorry, I'll be happy to answer all the questions.
We'll have another Q&A section, or time to do Q&A right after the next section. We're going to talk about finances next. How many times can I get her to stand up and down? I'd like to introduce Eileen Grady, who has been, I'll let her describe her time here at the library and how many years. We are fortunate that she has more than once stepped in when we were between directors and acted as interim director. And I'll let Eileen cover the next topic. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Eileen. Hi, my voice tonight.
I've been with the library since 2002, so I've seen a lot, and the last couple of years have made me tired. But here we are, we're gonna press on. Want to talk about the Villa Avenue building. I was here for the whole exchange. I was here for the move to this building. When we moved here, the Warren County Board of Supervisors at the time wanted to lease the Villa Avenue building. We're like, fine, so it was kind of like, you get this for free and we get this for free kind of deal. Okay, and then in 2011, they stepped forward and said, we really want to change some things and make some improvements, and we think we should buy it. We said, okay. And we negotiated a deal that included, we owed them still $231,000 in change for the furnishings that we had purchased for the building, because we had agreed to pay for all the furnishings. And then they paid us an additional $318,000 over 8 years, which we put into an investment account, which is now the endowment account. And it has grown with the addition of other monies and other donated funds over the years. For some reason, the debrief document focuses on this particular transaction in a way I don't understand. If I walked up to you and said, I want to buy your house from you, and I'm going to give you cash, and I gave you cash, I wouldn't expect for you to come back to me later and say, well, you know, you kind of owe me interest and that money's really mine, and I mean, it's not theirs. The taxpayer got the building as the asset in exchange for the cash. The taxpayer now has a building that sits on the books at $2.1 million. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Sounds like a smart decision on the Board of Supervisors' part at the time, and I don't even understand why it's part of the conversation, quite frankly. The endowment fund. The endowment fund is there for the long-term goal of the Library Board of Trustees is to build this endowment fund so that it will provide for the future of Samuel's Library. We keep being told, you have money, you should spend that. Well, you know, the county has established, this is a quote from their budget document for past year, they have a requirement that they establish an emergency reserve to pay for needs caused by unforeseen emergencies, etc. Why should we be expected to do anything less responsible than that? And what we're trying to do is build an endowment fund that, God willing, someday will enable us to be free of this kind of controversy and give you all the library you deserve. So that covers the endowment and the Bill Avenue building. And I'm going to introduce Michelle Leisure next.
Yes.
Michelle is my treasurer, and she's been a wonderful addition to our board.
It hates the new addition because they know I need help. So I'm gonna go over two things. One is the budget process, because I think there's some confusion out there that all we do is say, hey, we need this money, and we go to the Board of Supervisors and we demand it, and they're supposed to give it to us. Well, that's not what happens. What I'm gonna explain is the budget process, and I'm gonna tell you guys where the money goes. I'm going to tell you exactly where it goes. So the first thing is the budget process. So what you're seeing is our budget process. And I think it's pretty simple and it's pretty straightforward. Basically, like Scott said, our fiscal year starts July 1st and it goes till June 30th. So we close the books June 30th. Shortly after that, we have an audit. The auditors come in, we close our books. The auditors come in, we are audited on the previous year's financials. We have always received clean audits for the most part. I don't think we've never had an issue with our audits. During that time, we are also starting the work underway for the next year's budget. So the next year's budget in this case will be 2026. We're working on closing 2025. So Eileen is working on next year's budget. That's usually due to the Board of Supervisors the first week in December, okay? Interesting note for this year. I think comments have been made, like, oh, they're gonna increase their budget. Yes, we are gonna submit an increased budget. We have to increase our budget because of the maintenance issue. They pulled maintenance out. We had got, so a little side note, once we pulled maintenance out, we met and said, hey, we've got to increase the budget because we've got to put more maintenance expense in our budget. Like, okay, well, let's go back to the Board of Supervisors and get an estimate from them as to how much has been spent on our behalf from them on the maintenance on the last 10 years so that we can factor in a reasonable estimate now that we have to budget for us. They could not give us an estimate to put in to our 2026 budget. So just FYI, we are doing our due diligence.
coming from a treasurer position, it pains me to, every time we meet with Eileen, Elaine's like, we need more, but we cannot go to the board of supervisors with more because they'll just scream at us, or not scream, they just, no.
Say no.
Well, they'll say no. Nobody likes to be told no. Anyway, so we are very conscious of what we're asking for every time we go. And we do diligence. We're very conscious of that. So anyways, we do our work, we submit the budget, by the first week in December. And there's a working session. So usually around January, we have a working session with the board of supervisors. We sit down at a table, just like most of the organizations do, and we go say, here's our budget, this is why we need the money we're asking for, the increases that we're asking for, and why we need the increases. Here's some capital expenditures we might need. I think we put some capital, we put capital in there, and then any extra expenditures and why we need the expenditures we need. Just like just like you would expect from a budget. We do that, we work that out with the board of supervisors. And then at that point, we wait. We wait to see what they're gonna give us. It is completely in their hands at that point. We have, I don't know if they come back to us very often. No, okay. At that point, it's completely up to them as to what they're gonna give us for the next fiscal year. Sometimes, I think one year, they came back with $100 increase over the previous year. The charts that Mr. Jameson submitted, there was an increase. I think he presented, oh my gosh, there was such a big increase over the year, and it was so much higher than I think it was the population growth and the inflation growth. We had moved into this building, so we had higher expenses. It was higher head count, higher. So we had moved into this building. So that's the increase he's referring to. That's why he's going back so far, to show that, yes, they have such a base increase. Why are they asking for so much money? Well, we moved into a building that was 2 or 3 times the size. So that's what that chart is showing. So anyway, okay, so that's the budget process. If you go back to that slide, in the midst of this entire year, I do want to point out that we have bi-monthly trustee meetings. At every trustee meeting, Eileen brings in the financials and we say, here's what's actually happening compared to our budget. So we have a running, here's our financials and here's our budget. At every trustee meeting, there's the board of supervisor, if they show up, and they've been very good about showing up. Cheryl's been very good about showing up. They are part of that meeting. So they see the financials, here's our budget, here's the expenditures we're having, and here's what we budgeted, and here's the percentage as to where we are this year. Okay? That's the budget process. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is why you're all here, right? You want to know where your money's going. So, last year we got $1,024,000 from the Board of Supervisors. These are our expenditures. Most of the tax dollars that we are getting from the Board of Supervisors are going to salaries. They're going to the people that work in the building. We have 13 full-time people. We have 9 part-time. They're what makes this work. They're the most important. If you talk about assets, they are the most important asset at any organization, I think. And they're the most important asset of Samuel's Public Library. And I think anybody who comes to the library and experiences the library will attest that they are the most important asset we have. So you will see that we spend $687,000 on salaries, and then taxes and benefits, the other big number you will see up there, and that's all payroll related. Okay, so that's where most of the tax dollars are spent that we receive from the Board of Supervisors. You will see that books, there's no money going to books. The reason for that is that you'll see state funding. We have to be specific about where we put our money. With state funding, the state provides us, we have to be specific to say, hey, this is how much we're going to spend on books.
Yes, we filed a budget document for the state, but it has far more limitations in terms of categories.
Right. So we say, this is how much we spent on books, that goes to our state. Office equipment and maintenance, we have 26. So this is on top. So yes, the county pays for maintenance, but that we pay for more maintenance on top of what the county does. So just keep that in mind. We are also spending money on maintenance here. Okay? 10,000 on other expenses, 13,000 on office expense, office equipment and maintenance, again, 26, and then 6,000 on insurance. So that brings in utilities are 87. So again, the year that we moved into this building, I think the utilities went from, I think we were paying 24,000 a year on utilities at the old building, and those really increased.
That was high.
Yeah.
And then when we moved here, we had issues, and we worked through those, and this is about as good as it's been.
Yeah. So again, this is where your tax dollars are going.
And I will say, whenever we do maintenance, if it's on anything that we can improve the efficiency, lighting, et cetera, if we have ballast go out, we switch to LED because that will cost us less in the long run.
Yeah. Any big spend, we will meet, that's when the committee gets together. And we get together as the committee gets together and we will talk about, do we want to spend this money? Where do we pull the money from? How do we make this expenditure happen? Okay. Is that it for these slides? Oh, this, okay, yeah. And again, just some charts. The library is 1% of the general fund. So again, I'm not sure why why we're spending why the Board of Supervisors is spending so much time here. My personal note is that I'd like to see where the rest of the 96 is going, similar to what we showed on our end. That's just my 2 cents. Yeah, so, again, yes, is it, is there anything else on this slide? Yeah, next one. This one I wanted to point out because this was in Jameson's packet. And I wanted to show a couple things. He notes the 88,000 or 88% as total taxpayer. I did want to point out that for some reason he's got taxpayer Kaiser Road construction at 6.3. This asset is, the Kaiser Road construction that's a county property. I'm not sure why that number is in there. It's not operating budget. Yeah, that's not going into our operating budget. So I just wanted to point out some false, some kind of misleading information in this data if you were looking at this data. But the other thing I wanted to point out was the donation gifts and grants column. There's 1.4 million in there. Yeah, thank you. 1.4 million in donation, gifts, and grants. That money, I think if the Warren County, I don't know that money would happen under a Warren County library book. I just, that's gonna go away. And it's something to think about. I just don't think that's gonna happen. I don't know the handling was donation, or, once we lose.
There's a separate foundation,
Okay.
because they're a government entity.
They're government entities, but
Full government entity.
so people don't give donations to government entities typically. So just want to point out how well we do with donation gifts and grants. So I think that's it for the finance. Is that it for the finance?
Questions?
Questions?
A quick question. Okay. The question is, this, what you just showed is excellent. I can't really see all of it. Can we find that in the report, or do we have access to it? I mean,
Which one?
well, this one, I mean, some of the numbers are just, it would be nice to see what the number really is and what the gentleman has decided to put in his report.
Do you have access to the website?
Sure.
Why don't we put this PowerPoint up on our website tomorrow morning? Would that help people?
Not a problem. Not a problem.
So are the employees of the library employees of the Friends of Samuel's Library or of the county?
Neither, they're employees of Samuel's Public Library, Samuel's Incorporated.
Samuels and the Friends are two unique operations.
I'm not understanding.
So the Friends of Samuel's Public Library are their own separate nonprofit organization. All staff members of Samuel's Public Library are staff members of the Samuel's nonprofit.
They are not county employees.
No. Samuel's Public Library is a 501c3. We are a separate organization.
Okay, I did read or see somewhere that the library employees were county employees, and that's why I asked the question.
Let me just interject for a minute. County employees have a different system, and they receive often higher wages, and they're with the VRS, it's called VRS Retirement Program. So if the county were to take over, they would need to increase salaries and the employees would need to join that retirement. So once again, this structure shows how this structure saves the county taxpayer citizens by having lower costs. It's just one other area where our costs are lower than if it were county run. Does that help any? But we do try to do our best. We'll talk about competitive wages because I think that got brought up last night. And we struggle with our interviews, trying to get employees and quality employees. And unfortunately, we sat across the table from employees that turn us down because they make more at Starbucks or Target. So we've had to slowly increase salaries whenever we get an opportunity and try to raise the bar, raise the ship on an equal basis, and reward salaries to our employees that are deserving. So we don't get we've been flat funded. We don't get cost of living raises. So the library has made up the difference in order to provide living wages for our employees.
Can I add one quick thing? So the state aid model has not been fully funded at 100% since 1999. And the Virginia Library Association organization for which I work has been trying desperately to get us up to 100% so that number you have over there in that middle column can also go up. Happy to answer questions about that.
I'm sorry, I just make one more, and I know we gotta go.
When you look at the salaries are always going to be the biggest number. Sure. Okay, I work for the government, and you see how many people, the salaries, and for anyone to make a comment about salaries and benefits, that's the biggest chunk. Sure. But I don't think people, if you show that to somebody who had a problem with the library, they say, look how much money everybody makes. I know it's growing, and it's the way everything works. Right.
And if we were county agents, or if it was a county-run library tomorrow, that would go way up. VRS is a huge buy-in.
Aaron, there's one in the back.
In the front.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Sorry.
We'll come back to you, I promise.
Hi, this is, my name is Tim Francis. I wrote a couple letters to the editor. I greatly appreciate you pointing out the cost increase about a decade ago with the new facility. I shouldn't have made that connection, but I didn't, but I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
But the looking at the budget numbers, it just really is like, if they take all that money away, you're sunk, right?
Yeah.
Have you begun like thinking about what would you do? If they go through and create this board and essentially say, because I can imagine them saying, you only need to do A, B, C, and D, otherwise you're getting nothing. They're gonna say that.
Yeah.
So what, have you thought about what are you gonna do if that happens?
It's all we think about 24 hours a day. The reality is that we, as a nonprofit, cannot have government overreach and insertion into our collection policy and day-to-day operations. So we are painted into a box, and because I think that they know that. And if we choose not to go along with that proposal, does that make us look bad? We cannot operate and protect what we've built and the legacy of this organization and work with the government board that is trying to insert themselves into what we do on a daily basis. If we had funding and we could find deep pockets, we have all the assets and we have the lease and we could continue on operating as we do now. But it's $1 million a year operating. So again, we're caught between a rock and a hard place. And our board has already started talking about getting together and working on contingency plans. We think about it and we talk about it. And once this vote happens and we know which way that the wind is blowing, then we'll have to sit down, and it means more time and more meetings to see what do we do next. So please go out and vote. Please go out and please go out and make your voices heard, and we hope that that there will be a voice of reason out there somewhere. And in the meantime, we're going to keep fighting and see how we can make this all work. We do have somebody coming in the back. Oh, yeah, it was.
I was just wondering, the salary thing was getting me, and in his thing last night, he was like, oh, they make so much more than everybody else, blah, blah, blah. Where is he getting these numbers? And, the way he presented it, it's like, oh, we make that much? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People don't get it.
And I want to encourage you, I know Erin was trying to get around to comparisons of other libraries, but if you look on the walls, you will see that our library is, compared to other libraries of our same square footage and similar populations, that we were right on par with our peers. And
If I may.
Here comes the passion part.
This really bugs me. We are the red line, and then these are other surrounding libraries. Circulation, we are top. Visits per capita, we're at the top. Staff full-time equivalents, we're in the middle. Staff expenditures per capita, we're dropping down. Percent of operating income from local government, okay? Come and read these. These are taken every year. The library has to do an annual report for the state of Virginia. It's called Bibliostat. These numbers come right out of Bibliostat for every library. So this is real data. It's only through 2023 because we're all working on 2024 right now.
And these comparison libraries are the same comparison libraries that were used back in 2017. We didn't actually get to that section. At the original ad hoc committee that was done at that time, it was the Warren County Administration, the Board of Supervisors at the time sat down with Library Board of Trustees, staff at that time, and they looked at our current structure, how much it would cost for the county to take it on, as well as what would happen if not a for-profit company came on and took over management. So that's what this is. This is an updated version of this. We literally just plugged in the new fiscal year information. So this is FY23 because that's what is currently available with all the other libraries. We are currently in the process of putting in for FY24. And the reason why these libraries were chosen, part of that was asked by the county at the time, including our neighbors such as Hanley. But again, it's a little bit of apples to oranges, as Hanley is, again, it's a completely other kind of setup. They are a special government entity. They cover multiple different regions such as City of Winchester as well as Frederick and Clark County. And their population is also, at the time of this, 132,622. We were at 40,000. So that is why when looking at things like, I was trying to look, what was the one that they proposed before? Things like the per capita are going to be different because of the population difference.
Let's talk about why it's those libraries.
Yes, so also on these, you'll see that we are in the red, but you'll also see a couple of libraries that are also black here. Those are the ones that were close enough to us for peer-to-peer comparison. It can be a little difficult because every locality is a bit different. So it's different things such as, again, population, how many branches a library has, the square footage of the buildings can have a big contribute to the statistics. So we really tried to look for, at that time, libraries that were similar enough to Samuel's as a one branch system. And so you'll see the comparison libraries here. That was Culpeper, they're another one branch, as well as Stanton, Waynesboro as well. They were close enough to as being a one branch and in population. And you'll see here we are either right on board, better, and we'll make this available on our website as well.
Absolutely.
We are really going low on time, but yes.
The contingency in case this all goes to whatever. I just crunched the numbers. There's about 6,000 houses within Front Royal. If every house contributes $150,000, I'm sorry, $150 a year, their budget is made. That's less than most people pay for their Xfinity or their cell phone. It's like it's less than $15 a month. Why don't we have a campaign that just says, save the library $15 a month?
Let's take a couple more questions.
Something over there that, yeah.
I'm wondering what the possibility would be of having a sort of informal referendum where perhaps for over a period of 5 days, given hours, and I say 5 so that each day one of the supervisors could come in and have a desk set up where people show that they are registered voters here in Warren County. Yes, and library card holders. And to just say if they are for or against the proposal that the Board of Supervisors are offering. And that way you've got a community with facts and data. It's not just taking random votes, but seeing what people in this community are really saying. And I think we're going to be pleased with that. But is that a possibility? And if it is, I'm prepared to make that plea on December 10th. That's the meeting.
This is why we need the community. These are great ideas. And I know that we have our board and we're putting our heads together, but we're open to ideas to help keep this together.
I will say as a nonprofit, we do have to be a little bit careful on what kind of things like that we can do at the library, which is why we're always telling our patrons we really appreciate the support and to participate in going to the public hearing or board of supervisors, reaching out to board of supervisors.
It's hard for us to, we can't lobby we can advocate, but we can't lobby as a nonprofit.
So it would not be, what I propose would not be lobbying, and if board supervisor's member is here, then they can see everything that's on the up and up. And, so there wouldn't be the he said, she said, whatever.
Yeah, we'll have to run that by the lawyer. I did invite all of the supervisors to come tonight. Aaron, just to let you know. There's a gentleman right here, red sweater.
Cheryl Color.
Lady in the back. Yeah, Cheryl Colors would have been here tonight, but she has COVID. But I have not seen any of the other supervisors here tonight.
We probably have time for one more as we are.
Right here in the red sweater. And waiting patiently.
Thank you. I'm not a political person, but I would tell you that it seems to me with all the discussion, apart from the library itself being involved, a question came up earlier about, or a point was made earlier about elections. And there is something in that the citizens can do, and it's called recalls. For citizens to band together on this matter and do a recall and petition for that.
We're going to need to wrap this up a little bit, but if you still have questions, we're here to answer them. If you have questions of Lisa, we'll be happy to answer them. And we'll be back on Saturday as well to do this again. If you have friends or neighbors that still have questions and couldn't make it here tonight. And we want to, I'm sorry, you're pointing? What?
The lady in the back.
You want to let everybody know that we have a position, essentially summarizing everything that was presented this evening. And this will be online. This will be through change.org. We have a copy, and if you'd like to sign it here, and this is not from the library, this is not from the board, these are comments, they're from letters, they're from a culmination of all of this information stated in this petition. And if you'd like to sign it, we'll have various places that you can sign based on your own citizen participation. So, and again, this will be online in various places, and you should be able to find it. Hopefully, we'll be able to put it in one central location, and I'm sure everybody will.
If you have questions about that, why don't you contact Valerie directly?
Before you close, I want to speak for all of us here and all of the citizens of our county, thanking you, the staff, and the trustees.
So I'll close partly here by saying thank you to all of you for caring enough to come out on this freezing cold night. And we thank you for your continued help, support, and we look forward to where we go from here.